At my housewarming party, my husband walked through the front door with his billionaire mistress on his arm and said, "I wanted her to see what you managed to buy without me." The music stopped first. Not fully, just enough for the room to feel the wound before anyone understood where it came from. My guests turned toward the entrance. Friends from work, neighbors, old church women who had prayed for me when my marriage began falling apart. 2 cousins who had driven 6 hours just to see the first home I had ever owned in my name. My lawyer, who had become more like a sister. And my mother, standing near the kitchen with a tray of small meat pies in her hands, her smile slowly dying as she saw the man who had made her daughter cry for 3 years walk into the house like he had been invited. He had not. My husband, Julian Hart, stood in the doorway, wearing a charcoal suit, polished shoes, and that same calm, handsome smile that used to fool strangers into thinking he was gentle. Beside him was Cassandra Vale. Billionaire heiress, real estate investor, magazine cover woman, the kind of woman whose handbag could pay a family's rent for a year, and whose name made people lower their voices in expensive rooms. She wore a silver dress that looked poured onto her, a diamond bracelet, and a smile sharp enough to cut fruit. Her hand rested lightly on Julian's arm, not because she needed support, because she wanted everyone to see ownership. I was standing by the staircase, holding a glass of sparkling juice, wearing a dark green dress my mother had insisted made me look like a woman who survived something and charged interest. I had laughed when she said it. That was before Julian arrived. Now my fingers tightened around the glass. My house, my party, my guests, my new beginning. And my husband had brought the woman he left our marriage for, just to watch me bleed in public. Julian looked around the living room, at the fresh paint, the cream sofa, the long windows, the flowers, the framed photo of my late father on the mantel, the little handwritten sign my niece had made that said, "Welcome home, Aunt Maya." His eyes moved over everything with that cruel mixture of surprise and annoyance men wear when a woman they expected to stay broken has arranged her life beautifully without them. Then he looked at me. "Maya," he said warmly, like we were old friends. I did not answer. Cassandra smiled. "So this is the house." The way she said it made the word house sound like something borrowed. Something small, something amusing. My best friend, Talia, moved toward me slowly. Not in fear, in readiness. Talia was the kind of woman who could turn a polite smile into a warning sign. "Julian," she said, "you are not invited." He chuckled. I am still her husband. The room tightened. That sentence had been his favorite chain. Still her husband. Even after he moved out. Even after he appeared in public with Cassandra. Even after he stopped contributing to bills. Even after he told people we were separated in spirit, but refused to sign clean divorce papers because he liked leaving one foot in the door of my life. Still her husband. As if marriage gave him permanent access to any room I entered. Cassandra tilted her head. "Oh, I thought this was an open celebration." "No," my lawyer, Nadine Brooks, said from near the dining table. "It is private." Julian noticed her and smiled thinner. "Nadine, always around with papers, I see. Only where men create reasons for them." A few people murmured. Cassandra's smile flickered. Julian ignored Nadine and stepped farther inside. His gaze landed on the chandelier in the foyer, then on the staircase, then on the hallway leading to the kitchen. "You did better than I expected," he said. I finally spoke. "Leave." His eyebrows rose. "Not even a hello? You were not invited. Leave." Cassandra laughed softly. "Julian told me you were dramatic." My mother put the tray down. Slowly. That frightened me more than if she had shouted. My mother, Evelyn Carter, had been quiet for most of my marriage. Quiet in the way mothers become when their daughters beg them not to interfere. But she had watched enough, heard enough, cried enough in kitchens after I hung up pretending I was fine. She stepped forward. "Young lady," my mother said, looking at Cassandra, "do not mistake a woman's pain for theater just because you bought front row seats." The room went silent. Cassandra's face changed. Julian's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Carter," he said, with respect, "you lost the right to use that word in my daughter's house." My chest ached. My daughter's house. Not Julian's wife's house. Not the marital home. Not a property to be debated. Mine. Julian looked at me again. "So that's what this is? You bought a house and suddenly everyone claps like you became royalty." "No," Talia said. "We're clapping because she did it after surviving you." Cassandra smiled again, but now it was colder. "Surviving him? Please. Julian said he carried this marriage for years." A sound escaped me. Not a laugh. Not a sob. Something between disbelief and exhaustion. Julian turned quickly. "Maya." I looked at him. "You carried the marriage?" His eyes warned me. Old warning. Familiar warning. Do not speak. Do not expose. Do not ruin the polished version. But this was my house, and I had not spent 3 years becoming smaller so he could make himself bigger at my own housewarming. "You carried what, Julian?" I asked. "The mortgage application I signed alone? The rent you stopped helping with before you moved out? The hospital bills for my mother when you said her illness was not your responsibility? The business debt you hid until creditors called our apartment? The nights I worked 2 jobs while you took Cassandra to investor dinners and told me they were client meetings?" Cassandra's smile disappeared. That part surprised me. Maybe Julian had not told her everything. Men who betray women often edit the suffering out of their success story. Julian stepped toward me. "Do not embarrass yourself." "No," I said. "That is what you came here to do for me." A few guests shifted. Someone near the back began recording. Julian noticed. He raised both hands in a false gesture of peace. "Everyone, please. I came to congratulate my wife." "You came with your mistress," Nadine said. Cassandra's eyes flashed. "I am not some common woman you can insult." Nadine looked at her calmly. "No, you are a wealthy one. The noun remains accurate." A gasp moved through the room. Talia covered her mouth, not to hide shock, but laughter. Julian's face darkened. "Maya, control your guests." That sentence did something to me. Control your guests. In my house. At my party. After he arrived uninvited with the woman he used to humiliate me. I placed my glass on the side table and walked toward him. Not fast. Not angry in the loud way. Steady. The way you walk when something inside you has already made the decision your mouth is about to announce. "This is my home," I said. "My guests do not need controlling. You need removing." His eyes narrowed. "You would throw your husband out?" "Yes." Cassandra scoffed. "How classy." I looked at her. "Cassandra, you are standing in another woman's house at her housewarming party after arriving with her husband. Class left before you entered." Someone whispered, "My God." Julian stepped between us. "Enough." "No," I said. He lowered his voice, so only the front of the room could hear, but still loud enough. "You should be careful. You may own this little house, but Cassandra's company controls half the developments in this city. You think one cute house makes you powerful?" There it was. The real reason he brought her. Not love, not celebration. A demonstration. He wanted me to see the woman he had chosen was richer, shinier, more connected, more intimidating. He wanted me to compare my home to her empire and shrink. But he did not know what I had signed that morning. Nobody in that room did. Not my mother. Not Talia. Not even Julian. That morning, at 9:17 a.m., I had closed on a deal that changed everything. My small but fast-growing affordable housing design firm, Carter Living Solutions, had been acquired by a national housing trust for a sum that made my hands tremble when the final wire confirmation came through. More importantly, I had negotiated to become executive chair of the new foundation arm, and that foundation had just purchased controlling interest in the old Hawthorne Mill district. The same district Cassandra Vale's company needed for her next luxury development. The same district Julian had bragged about for months, without knowing my company was quietly partnering with the community coalition that opposed Cassandra's displacement plan. The same district that would soon become affordable homes, small shops, daycare centers, and women-owned workspaces, instead of another glass tower named after someone already rich. I looked at Julian, then at Cassandra. "You are right," I said. "One house does not make me powerful." Julian smiled, thinking he had won. I continued, "But knowing who owns the land beneath someone else's plan does." Cassandra's face changed. Just a little. "Enough." Nadine's eyes sharpened because she understood before anyone else did. Julian frowned. "What are you talking about?" Before I could answer, the front door opened again. This time, not dramatically, professionally. 2 men and 1 woman entered, led by my assistant, Ruth. They wore business suits and carried folders. The woman stepped forward. "Ms. Carter, apologies for the interruption. You asked us to come at 8 if Mr. Hart appeared." Julian turned toward me slowly. "You planned this?" "No," I said. "You were predictable." The woman looked at Julian. "Mr. Hart, I am Elena Morris, counsel for Carter Living Trust. Cassandra Vale, you should have received formal notice 30 minutes ago. Carter Living Trust has finalized its acquisition of the Hawthorne Mill District controlling parcels. Any development proposal involving those parcels now requires our approval." Cassandra went completely still. The room did too. Elena continued. "Additionally, due to public records and documented conflicts involving Mr. Hart's consulting role with Vale Meridian Properties, Carter Living Trust is freezing all informal discussions with Vale Meridian until ethics review is complete." Julian looked at Cassandra. She looked at him. For the first time since entering my house, they were not united. Cassandra whispered, "You said she was just doing small housing projects." Julian's mouth opened. No answer came. I looked at him. "You said I bought a cute little house." I turned to Cassandra. "You said this was the house." Then I looked around my living room, at my mother, at my friends, at the people who had seen me lose sleep, money, confidence, and years to a man who wanted me small. "No," I said softly. "This is only the first room I wanted peace in." The silence that followed was deep. Then my mother began clapping. One clap, then another. Talia joined, then Nadine. Then the room filled with applause. Not the fake applause people give at parties. The kind that rises because everyone understands something just shifted. Julian stood in the middle of my living room, with his billionaire mistress beside him, finally realizing he had walked into my housewarming party to shame a woman whose life he no longer had permission to underestimate. Cassandra stepped back from his arm. Small movement, big meaning. Julian saw it and panicked. "Maya?" he said, voice lower now. "Can we speak privately?" I smiled. "No." He swallowed. "Maya, please." That word had once been enough to pull me toward him. Please. Soft voice, tired eyes, a reminder of the man I had loved before he became a stranger with my secrets. But tonight, please sounded like strategy. I looked toward the door. "You know the way out. Before I continue, tell me where you are watching from tonight. And if you have ever been humiliated by someone who thought your new beginning was too small to matter, stay with me. Because sometimes the person who comes to laugh at your house does not know you already own the ground under their castle. My name is Maya Carter. For 7 years, I was Maya Hart. That name once felt like music. Then it became a noise I could not stop hearing. Now it is a chapter title in a book I no longer lend to people who only read the parts where I suffered. I grew up in a narrow apartment above my mother's tailoring shop on Grove Street. The shop had one front window, 2 sewing machines, a wall of fabric rolls, and a bell over the door that rang all day with women bringing torn hems, wedding dresses, school uniforms, church outfits, and secrets they trusted my mother to keep. My father died when I was 12. A car accident on a rainy evening. 1 phone call. 1 hospital hallway. 1 pair of shoes my mother refused to throw away for 6 years. After he died, my mother, Evelyn Carter, became both softness and steel. She cried only when she thought I was sleeping. During the day, she measured fabric, marked chalk lines, stitched seams, and told me, "Maya, cloth teaches life. Cut wrong, and you lose shape. Stitch patiently, and even torn things can hold. I grew up under cutting tables and beside humming machines. I learned color before I learned algebra. I learned patience by watching my mother undo bad stitches without cursing. I learned pride by watching her refuse discounts from women who arrived in expensive cars but wanted poor woman prices. My mother was not rich, but she had dignity. She used to say, "Money is useful, but dignity is furniture. A home without it feels empty no matter how full the rooms are." Maybe that is why I loved houses. Not just buildings. Homes. Rooms. Light. Corners where people could breathe. I used to draw floor plans in old notebooks. I drew homes for widows, students, single mothers, elderly people, children with no quiet place to do homework. I imagined small rooms made beautiful, because beauty should not belong only to the rich. When I told my mother I wanted to study design, she nodded like I had confirmed something she already knew. "Then design places for people who know what struggle smells like," she said. I did. I studied interior architecture through scholarships and part-time work. I cleaned offices in the morning, attended classes during the day, worked in a furniture store at night, and came home to help my mother with urgent sewing orders. I was tired often, but I was happy in the tired way that means you are moving towards something. I met Julian Hart at 27. He came into my mother's shop with a jacket that needed tailoring before a business event. He was charming from the first second, the kind of man who made a small room feel like a stage he had kindly agreed to stand on. He complimented my mother's work, then my sketches, then my eyes. My mother raised one eyebrow at me when he left. "Careful," she said. "What?" "Men who notice too much too quickly may be shopping." I laughed. She did not. Julian returned 2 days later. Then again. Then he asked if I designed spaces professionally. I said I was trying. He said, "Trying is what people say before they become great." I liked that. He worked in business development for a real estate company then. He said he helped developers connect with investors, architects, contractors, and city officials. He knew everyone, or claimed to. He moved through the world like doors were already opening for him. I was building my first tiny design firm from my laptop. He loved that story. At first, he said I had vision. He said I understood people. He said I made small spaces feel expensive without losing warmth. He introduced me to 2 clients in our first year together. Real clients. Paying clients. I was grateful. That gratitude became one of the roots of my blindness. Because when someone helps you early, you may keep paying emotional interest long after the debt is gone. We married after 3 years. A modest wedding in a garden behind a community hall. My mother made my dress herself, ivory with tiny pearl buttons down the back. Julian cried during the vows. His parents were both gone, so my mother welcomed him like a son. At the reception, he stood and said, "Maya believed in me before the world knew my name." People clapped. I cried. I did not know then that some people praise your belief because they are already planning to live off it. The early marriage was not terrible. That is the part people often misunderstand. Cruelty does not always arrive wearing its real face. Sometimes it comes after tenderness, after good mornings, after shared jokes, after late-night dreams, after someone holding your hand during a hard season. Julian could be sweet. He remembered anniversaries. He brought my mother flowers. He bragged about my talent to clients. He told me he wanted us to build an empire together. But slowly, the word together changed. At first, together meant partnership. Then it meant I should work harder because his opportunities were bigger. Then it meant my money could cover shortfalls because his reputation was an investment. Then it meant my sacrifices were part of our future, while his choices were part of his identity. He left his job to start a real estate consulting company. I supported him, emotionally, financially. Practically, I designed his pitch decks, edited proposals, introduced him to clients from my growing network, helped him stage investor events, paid rent when his invoices delayed, covered groceries when he had cash flow issues. My design firm grew slowly but steadily. I started specializing in affordable housing interiors, low-cost renovation plans, and human-centered design for nonprofits. It was not glamorous, but it mattered. Julian respected it publicly. Privately, he called it charity design. "Maya," he said once, standing in our kitchen while I reviewed plans for a women's shelter renovation. "You are too talented to keep designing for people who cannot pay premium. They are paying what they can. That is not business. It is purpose." He sighed. "Purpose does not build wealth." I looked at him. "Neither does pretending every rich person has vision." He did not laugh. The first real crack came when Cassandra Vale entered our lives. She was the only daughter of Harrison Vale, a billionaire developer whose company owned luxury towers, hotels, shopping districts, and political friendships disguised as philanthropy. Cassandra had inherited wealth, yes, but she was not foolish. She was sharp, ambitious, and used to winning before negotiations began. Julian met her at a real estate conference. He came home glowing. "Cassandra Vale understands scale," he said. I was chopping onions. "That's good." "No, Maya, you don't understand. This could change everything. Everything." Men often use that word when they are about to change loyalty. At first, Cassandra was a client, then a mentor, then a strategic partner, then the woman whose calls he took outside, whose messages appeared at midnight, whose name turned his voice careful. I noticed. Of course I noticed. Wives are often the first auditors of betrayal. We see changes in tone, in shirts, in passwords, in perfume that does not belong to us. In the way a man begins criticizing the woman at home because another woman outside is applauding his edited version. Julian began comparing. Not directly at first. Cassandra thinks bigger. Cassandra moves fast. Cassandra says affordable housing politics are messy. Cassandra believes developers should not apologize for profit. I finally said, "Then marry Cassandra's philosophy." He looked at me for a long time. That is exactly the kind of small comment that keeps you small. Small. That word stayed. A month later, he missed my mother's surgery because he had an investor dinner. I sat in the hospital waiting room alone, answering calls from nurses, signing forms, praying, while my husband sat somewhere across town with Cassandra Vale discussing luxury district branding. When I confronted him, he said, "Your mother was not alone. You were there." I stared. "She is your family too." He rubbed his face. "Maya, I am trying to build something that will help all of us." "No. You are trying to build something that makes you feel important." He slept at his office that night, or said he did. The affair became public before it became confessed. A photo appeared online from a charity gala. Julian and Cassandra standing close, too close. Her hand on his chest, his smile softer than business. People sent it to me with careful messages. "Is everything okay? Just checking on you." Maybe it's nothing. It was never nothing. I asked him directly, "Are you involved with Cassandra?" He looked offended. Not innocent. Offended. "You're embarrassing yourself." That was his answer. I asked again. He said, "She respects my ambition. That is not a crime." "No, but lying is." His face hardened. "You know what your problem is? You want me to stay in the little life where you feel safe." I laughed because the pain was too sharp. "The little life where I pay rent?" He glared. "Don't start counting." There it was. Counting. The thing women are told not to do when math reveals imbalance. He moved out 3 months later. Not officially. He said he needed space. He took suits, watches, documents, and the espresso machine I bought. He left behind old shoes, unpaid utility bills, and a marriage he refused to end cleanly. Cassandra began appearing with him openly. Industry events, restaurant openings, charity dinners. Business pages called them a power pair. I was still legally his wife, but magazines do not print abandoned women unless the story is useful. My mother wanted me to file for divorce immediately. Talia did too. I hesitated, not because I wanted him back, because grief makes even freedom feel like another thing to carry. Eventually I filed. Julian delayed, questioned assets, claimed he had contributed to my business growth because he had introduced early clients, minimized what I had paid during marriage, suggested my design firm had benefited from his reputation. His lawyers were polished, mine was better. Nadine Brooks entered my life like a storm in a navy suit. She listened to my story once, then said, "Julian thinks your kindness destroyed your memory. We will correct him." She helped me gather documents, rent records, bank transfers, emails, project files, client histories, receipts, messages where Julian acknowledged I covered household bills. I cried the first time I saw the folder, not because of the money alone, because the paper told the truth more clearly than I had allowed myself to say it. Nadine told me, "Documentation is not bitterness, it is memory with shoes on." The divorce dragged. During that time, I poured myself into work, not to avoid pain, to survive it. My affordable housing designs had begun attracting attention because they were practical, beautiful, and deeply human. I believed poor families deserved more than gray walls, flickering lights, and layouts that treated dignity like a luxury upgrade. I designed shared courtyards where children could play safely, laundry rooms with natural light, community kitchens, small balconies, flexible rooms for grandparents, single parents, remote work, and family care. Developers often complained. "Too thoughtful," one said. I smiled. "Thank you." He did not hire me. Others did. A nonprofit housing group commissioned me for a major renovation, then a city partnership, then a regional foundation, then the Hawthorne Mill project. Hawthorne Mill was an old industrial district on the east side of the city. Warehouses, abandoned textile buildings, cracked roads, working-class families, old churches, and small businesses hanging on with fingernails. Cassandra Vale wanted it. Everyone knew. Her company, Val Meridian Properties, planned a luxury mixed-use development with glass towers, boutiques, rooftop restaurants, and urban renewal language that usually means poor people are about to be removed politely. Julian worked as a consultant on the project. He loved telling people that Cassandra was transforming the city. I worked with a community coalition that wanted something else: affordable homes, small business protection, childcare, job training, public green space, a design plan that kept memory instead of bulldozing it. For months, we worked quietly, very quietly, because Cassandra had power, money, lawyers, city relationships. But she did not have everything. Several controlling parcels in Hawthorne Mill were owned by small family trusts, retired factory workers, and church groups who did not trust Vale Meridian. They wanted a buyer who would protect the community. Carter Living Solutions became part of that solution. Then came the National Housing Trust. They had been watching my work. They offered acquisition. Not to swallow my company, to expand it. I negotiated hard. Nadine helped. My mother prayed. Talia threatened to personally haunt me if I undersold myself. The deal closed the morning of my housewarming party. I had bought the house 6 weeks earlier. Not a mansion. Not small either. A warm, old 3-bedroom with a wide porch, good bones, and a backyard big enough for my mother to plant herbs. I bought it with my own money while the divorce was still pending, but legally protected, as separate property, through careful structuring Nadine made sure of. It was my first owned home, after years of renting, after years of Julian calling my work small, after years of paying for places where I never felt secure. I wanted the housewarming to be gentle, no speeches, no drama, just food, music, laughter, and people who loved me without needing me to shrink. My mother arrived early with trays of food. Talia arrived with flowers and a bottle of sparkling cider because she said, "We are not drinking cheap sadness in this house." Nadine brought a plant and 3 copies of a property protection folder because apparently lawyers flirt with joy through paperwork. The neighbors came. My cousins came. Women from the shelter project came. 2 families from the Hawthorne community came because they said my designs made them feel seen. I cried twice before the party began. Good tears. Then Julian came with Cassandra and tried to turn my beginning into his stage. After Elena Morris delivered the Hawthorne notice in my living room, Cassandra's face changed in a way I will never forget. Not fear. Calculation. Billionaires do not usually panic in public. They assess. She looked at Elena, then Nadine, then me, then Julian. "You knew?" she asked him. Julian shook his head quickly. "No. Cassandra, no. I had no idea." That was true. And somehow worse for him, because he had mocked what he had not bothered to understand. Cassandra's voice sharpened. "You told me Carter Living was a boutique nonprofit design firm." Julian swallowed. "That's what it was." I stepped forward. "That is what you needed it to be." Cassandra looked at me. For the first time, she truly looked. Not at my dress, not at my house, not at my status as Julian's discarded wife. At me. "Maya Carter," she said slowly. "Yes. You are behind the community trust acquisition?" "I am part of it." Her eyes narrowed. "You understand Vale Meridian has invested years into Hawthorne." "I understand Vale Meridian invested in a version of Hawthorne that erased the people already there." Julian jumped in. "Maya, this is not the time." I looked at him. "You brought her to my housewarming party." His mouth closed. Cassandra straightened. "I did not come here to discuss business." "No," Nadine said. "You came to help a married man humiliate his wife. Business followed you." Cassandra's eyes flashed. "I do not tolerate disrespect." My mother stepped forward again. "Then stop carrying it into other women's homes." Cassandra looked at her, and for a moment I saw how unused she was to people outside her class speaking directly. Julian reached for Cassandra's arm. "Let's go." She pulled away. That small movement satisfied half the room. Not because she was innocent. She was not. But because Julian had expected her to be his weapon, and she had begun realizing he had made her look foolish. Elena handed Cassandra an envelope. "Formal notice. Digital copies have already been sent to your legal department." Cassandra took it without looking away from me. "This is not over." "No," I said, "but this party is." She turned and walked out. Julian hesitated. For one foolish second, he looked like he might stay. Talia moved beside me. "Try it," she whispered. He left. The door closed behind them. The room exhaled. No one spoke for several seconds. Then my little niece Amara, who was 7 and had been watching from behind my cousin's skirt, asked loudly, "Aunt Maya, was that the bad husband?" The room exploded. Laughter, shock, embarrassed coughing. My mother said, "Amara!" But even she laughed. I laughed too. Not because it was funny, because children often name things adults dress in too many words. Yes, that was the bad husband. Or at least, the husband who had done bad things. The distinction mattered later. Not that night. That night, Talia picked up the music remote and said, "We are not letting that man ruin chicken and good lighting." The music returned. People hugged me. Some asked questions. Some pretended not to ask questions but stood close enough to hear answers. Nadine pulled me into the kitchen. "Are you okay?" "No." "Good." Honest answer. I leaned against the counter. "My hands are shaking." "They can shake. Your boundary did not." I looked toward the living room where people were eating again, laughing carefully, trying to restore joy. I hate that he brought her here. I know. I hate that part of me still wanted him to feel ashamed. Nadine's expression softened. "Maya, wanting a person to feel the weight of what they did is not the same as being trapped by them." I nodded. Then my mother entered quietly. She took my face in both hands. "Look at me." I did. "You did not lose tonight." "I know." "No," she said. "Know it deeper." My eyes filled. "You stood in your house. You told the truth. You did not break. Your father would have danced in this kitchen." That broke me. I cried into her shoulder. Not long. Just enough. Then she wiped my face with a napkin and said, "Do not let tears ruin the eyeliner. It was expensive." I laughed. That was my mother. Softness with scissors. The next morning, the gossip began. Not just social gossip. Business gossip. Someone had recorded enough of the confrontation to prove Julian arrived uninvited with Cassandra and left after the Hawthorne notice. The clip did not go fully public at first, but it traveled through the real estate world like fire in dry grass. By noon, 3 reporters had called. By evening, Vale Meridian released a statement saying their company respected community development processes and would review new information regarding Hawthorne Mill. Corporate language. Beautiful fog. Julian called 14 times. I did not answer. Then he texted, "Maya, please, we need to talk before this gets out of hand." I sent the message to Nadine. She replied with one line. "It is already out of his hand. That is why he wants yours." Cassandra did not call me. Her lawyer called Elena. That was smarter. Over the next weeks, Hawthorne became the center of a public battle. Vale Meridian tried to challenge the acquisition. Failed. Tried to pressure city officials. Met resistance because the community coalition had organized better than they expected. Tried to rebrand their plan as inclusive. Too late. Carter Living Trust presented our plan publicly in the old mill courtyard on a windy Saturday morning. Hundreds of residents came. I stood on a small platform wearing a blue suit and low heels because the ground was uneven. My mother sat in the front row beside women from Grove Street. Talia stood near the side, recording everything. Nadine watched the crowd like she expected someone to object legally to the weather. I spoke about homes, not units, homes. I spoke about keeping families near schools, protecting small shops, building courtyards, restoring brick instead of erasing it, creating rents tied to real wages, making room for elders, children, disabled residents, and women starting over. I did not mention Cassandra. I did not mention Julian. That restraint angered him more than insult would have. Because people like Julian want to be central even in your recovery. After the presentation, an older man named Mr. Lewis came to me. He had worked at Hawthorne Mill for 34 years before it closed. "My wife died in that neighborhood," he said. "I'm sorry. She loved the old brick buildings, said they held heat like memory." I smiled. "That sounds beautiful." He nodded toward the plans. "You keeping the brick?" "Yes." His eyes filled. "Then you are not just building, you are listening." That sentence became the heart of the project. Listening. That was what Julian never truly did. He heard my usefulness, my support, my silence, my apology, my fear, but he never listened to my purpose. 3 months after the housewarming, Cassandra requested a private meeting. Nadine said, "Absolutely not." Elena said, "Strategically, perhaps." Talia said, "Let me come disguised as a plant." I met Cassandra in Elena's office with lawyers present. Not alone. Never alone with people who confuse charm and power. Cassandra arrived in a black suit, no glitter, no Julian. She looked more serious than I had ever seen her. "Maya," she said. "Cassandra." She sat across from me. "I am not here to apologize for my relationship with Julian. I did not expect you to." Her mouth tightened. "I am here because Hawthorne matters to Vale Meridian. It matters to the people who live there more." She nodded slowly. "I underestimated your coalition." "Yes." "And you." "Yes." A flicker of irritation crossed her face. Then something like respect. Julian misrepresented several things. About me or about Hawthorne? Both. I leaned back. "Convenient. I am not blaming him for my choices," she said, "but I do not appreciate being used as a prop in a domestic humiliation." That was interesting. Not remorse for helping hurt me. Anger at being used badly. Still, truth can begin in selfish places. "You came willingly," I said. "I did." "You smiled." "I did." "You wanted me to feel small." She held my gaze. "Yes." No excuse, no performance. That surprised me. Then she added, and I was wrong. The room went quiet. Nadine's pen paused. Cassandra continued. I believe Julian's version, that you were bitter, limited, dependent on sympathy. I did not bother to verify because his version benefited my ego. I said nothing. I cannot undo that, she said. No. But I can separate Vale Meridian from Julian Hart, effective immediately. His consulting agreement has been terminated. My heart gave one hard beat. I kept my face still. Cassandra placed a document on the table. Vale Meridian is withdrawing its challenge to the Hawthorne acquisition. Elena picked up the document. Nadine leaned in. Cassandra looked at me. We would like to explore a limited investment in the community commercial corridor, under Carter Living Trust control, with binding affordability and local ownership conditions. I almost laughed. The billionaire had come to negotiate with the woman whose little house she mocked. Life has taste sometimes. We will review, I said. Cassandra nodded. I expected that. Before she left, she paused at the door. For what it is worth, Julian told me your housewarming would be pathetic. I smiled slightly. And yet he dressed up for it. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. Then she said, men like Julian attend what they claim to dismiss. She left. Nadine looked at me. I dislike her less than I planned. Same. Still not enough to trust. Never. Cassandra's withdrawal damaged Julian badly. Professionally more than romantically, though with Julian those things were tangled. He had built his recent reputation on access to her empire. Without it, he became just another charming consultant with burned bridges and inflated stories. The divorce moved faster after that. His lawyers became more cooperative. Funny how quickly people discover fairness when leverage dies. During mediation, Julian looked smaller than before. Still handsome. Still dressed well, but tired. He sat across the table from me, not quite meeting my eyes. Nadine sat beside me with a folder thick enough to make justice feel heavy. Julian's attorney began with polite statements. Nadine responded with documentation. House purchase, separate property, business acquisition, premarital and post-separation assets, financial contributions, evidence of his debt, evidence of his public relationship with Cassandra before separation agreements were finalized, evidence of his unpaid household obligations. Julian listened silently. Then, during a break, he asked to speak to me privately. Nadine said, no. He looked at me. Maya, please. I said, anything you need to say can be said with counsel present. His mouth tightened. Then he nodded. Fine. He looked down at his hands. I did not know you had become that successful. I stared. Not the sentence I wanted. Not I am sorry. Not I hurt you. I did not know you were powerful enough to matter. I said nothing. He continued. I mean, I knew you were doing well, but not that. That what? He swallowed. Hawthorne. The acquisition. The trust. You stopped asking about my work when it stopped serving your image. He flinched. I was lost. No, Julian. You were ambitious without loyalty. That is not lost. That is chosen. His face hardened slightly, then softened again. Old habits fighting new consequences. Cassandra made everything feel possible. No. Cassandra made everything look expensive. That landed. He looked away. I loved you once, he said. I know. That surprised him. I continued. You loved me when I helped you feel like the man you wanted to become. You stopped loving me when I began reminding you of the man you actually were. His eyes filled. For 1 second, I saw the Julian from the tailoring shop. The man who praised my sketches. The man who cried during vows. The man who brought my mother flowers. Then I remembered the housewarming, the silver dress, the cruel smile. The way he said cute little house. Both versions were real. That is what makes leaving hard. People are rarely one thing, but the harm they choose still counts. I am sorry, he said finally. I waited. For bringing Cassandra to your home, for embarrassing you, for lying, for letting you carry bills while I chase status, for making your work seem small because I felt small beside it. Specific, late, painful, useful only as truth, not repair. I hear you, I said. He nodded. Maybe he wanted forgiveness. Maybe he wanted comfort. I gave neither. The divorce finalized 2 months later. I signed my name slowly. Maya Carter. Not Hart. The pen did not shake. That evening, my mother and Talia came to my house with food. Nadine came too, claiming she was only dropping off final documents, then staying 3 hours and eating half a tray of plantain. We did not throw a divorce party. That felt too simple. Instead, we sat on the porch under soft yellow lights and let the night breathe. My mother asked, "Are you sad?" "Yes." "Good." I looked at her. She shrugged. "It means your heart did not become stone." Talia raised her glass. "To hearts that stay soft without staying stupid." We drank to that. Hawthorne Mill broke ground the following year. Not with golden shovels for cameras, with old factory workers, residents, children, shop owners, and community leaders standing together on ground people had fought to keep. We restored the first warehouse into a mixed-use building. Ground floor shops, a daycare, a community kitchen, upper floors with affordable apartments, wide windows, warm halls, murals honoring the textile workers, benches for elders, safe lighting, laundry rooms that did not feel like punishment. When the first families moved in, I stood near the entrance trying not to cry. A little boy ran into the courtyard and shouted, "Mama, we have trees." Trees. After all the legal battles, funding rounds, public meetings, press attacks, and design revisions, that was what mattered first. A child saw trees. My mother squeezed my hand. "Your father would have liked this." "Yes." He would have said the stitching held. I laughed through tears. Yes, he would. Cassandra did invest eventually. Under our terms. Strict ones. Local ownership. Affordability covenants. Transparent governance. No naming rights. That last one annoyed her. She accepted anyway. Over time, she became less enemy and more complicated ally. Not friend, not exactly, but someone who learned that money could enter a room without taking its soul if forced to behave. Julian tried to re-enter the real estate world under a new brand. It did not go well at first. People remembered. Not everything. Enough. He eventually took a job with a mid-sized firm outside the city. Less glamorous. More honest, maybe. I heard he became quieter. Good for him. Far from me. 2 years after the housewarming, I held another party. Not housewarming this time. Home anniversary. My mother insisted that was not a real thing. Talia said anything with food is real. Nadine brought another plant. The first one had somehow survived, despite my inconsistent watering, which she called evidence of divine favor. People filled the house again. Laughter. Music. Children. Neighbors. Hawthorne residents. Design students. Old women from my mother's sewing circle. This time, no one uninvited crossed the threshold. At sunset, I stood in the living room and looked around. The house had changed. Not physically much, but emotionally. The walls no longer remembered humiliation first. They remembered my mother dancing in the kitchen. Talia laughing too loudly. Nadine arguing with a contractor on my behalf. Children falling asleep on the sofa. Women from the shelter project touching the curtains and saying, "This feels peaceful." The front door opened only for people I chose. That is when I knew the house had become a home. Not because I bought it, because I protected what it meant. Later that night, after everyone left, I found my mother on the porch. She was sitting quietly, looking at the street. I sat beside her. "You okay?" She nodded. I was thinking about Julian. I tensed. She noticed. Not kindly. I laughed. She smiled. "He came here to shame you, yes. And somehow that pushed everything into the open, yes." She looked at me. Painful doors still open. That sounded like something my father would say. Maybe grief teaches people to borrow the voices they miss. I leaned my head on her shoulder. For a long time, I said, I thought if I became successful enough, what he did would stop hurting. Did it? No. She nodded. Success does not erase wounds. It gives you better rooms to heal in. I closed my eyes. The porch light glowed softly. The house behind us was quiet. My house. My better room. People often ask if Cassandra was truly a billionaire. Yes, that part was true. They ask if she knew Julian was married. Yes, that part was also true. They ask if I hated her. At first, yes. Then no. Not because she deserved easy grace, but because hatred is too intimate to spend on someone who eventually became business paperwork. They ask if Julian loved her. I do not know. I think he loved what standing beside her did to his reflection. Some people do not love people. They love mirrors that make them look taller. They ask if I ever loved Julian after everything. Yes. That is the hardest truth. Love does not vanish because someone humiliates you. It fades unevenly. It returns at inconvenient moments. It remembers good days with cruel accuracy. But love alone is not a reason to remain available for disrespect. I loved him. Then I chose myself. Both are true. The housewarming party became a story people told in different ways. Some said I embarrassed him. Some said Cassandra got what she deserved. Some said I should have handled it privately. Privately. That word always appears when public cruelty finally meets public consequence. No one asked Julian to humiliate me privately. No one asked Cassandra to stay away privately. No one asked me whether my dignity deserved public protection. So I stopped caring about people who only preach privacy after harm is exposed. What truly mattered was not the applause that night. It was not the legal notice. It was not Cassandra stepping away from Julian. It was not even the Hawthorne deal. What mattered was the moment I said, "This is my home," and believed it. For years, I had lived in spaces where I paid bills but still felt temporary. Temporary wife, temporary partner, temporary priority, temporary peace. That night, in my own living room, I became permanent to myself. My husband showed up at my housewarming party with his billionaire mistress to spite me. He wanted me to feel poor beside her wealth, small beside her power, abandoned beside their partnership, embarrassed in front of the people who loved me. Instead, he learned that money cannot buy the truth out of a room once it is ready to speak. He learned that the woman he called small had been building where he refused to look. He learned that the house he mocked was not the measure of my rise. It was the shelter I chose after surviving his fall. And Cassandra learned something too. That being richer than a woman does not make you better than her. That walking into another woman's home as a weapon can backfire when the woman has already stopped bleeding for the man holding you. That power without respect is just expensive emptiness. If you are listening from your own housewarming moment, your own fresh start, your own little room of peace, and someone tries to enter with the past on their arm just to remind you of pain, hear me clearly. You do not have to shrink because they brought someone shinier. You do not have to explain your healing to people who preferred you broken. You do not have to let anyone turn your new beginning into their performance. Stand in your room. Use your voice. Let the people who love you witness the truth. Close the door when the visit becomes violence to your spirit. And remember this, a house does not have to be larger than theirs to be yours. A life does not have to look expensive to be valuable. A woman does not have to compete with a mistress to win back dignity she never truly lost. The real victory is not making them regret leaving. The real victory is not making them regret leaving. The real victory is not making them regret leaving. The real victory is not making them regret leaving. The real victory is not making them regret leaving. The real victory is not making them regret leaving. The real victory is not making them regret leaving. The real victory is not making them regret leaving. I kept the house. I filled it with people who did not need me humiliated before they could feel important. And when Julian walked in with Cassandra Vale to spite me, he did not ruin my housewarming. He became the final cold wind that proved my doors could close.